Let me just. Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Swaha Tatsavitra Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Sadgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityurmamritam Gamya Om Sahana Bhavtu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahviryam Karvavahi Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti 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 Om. So Yog Darshan, second chapter, Sadhana Pad. And we started looking at the definition of asmita, because asmita is the second klesh. And altogether there are 5 klesh, afflictions, right? Avidya, asmita. So this is a sutra number 6. And sutra is, what is a sutra? Sutra is a form of writing. Very short, condensed, deep message is given in the sutras. That's why we have to open it up, understand what does it really mean. So he says, Drig Darshan Shaktor Ek Atmataha Ev Asmita. So he says, Asmita emerges when the perceiver's power dissolves into the power of perception. So in other words, this is an ego. I amness. And it's also an extension of avidya. So this confused self-awareness is asmita. So the light flickering deep inside prompts asmita to discover consciousness, the seer within. Avidya, on the other hand, prompts asmita to believe that what we see is the seer. There's nothing beyond the pale of what we see. The line that keeps subject and object distinct has become blurred. And there's nothing to prevent avidya from casting its magic spell on seer and seen, subject and object, perceiver and perceived. And that's what causes them to identify with each other. That's how we identify ourselves with our body. So this identification is asmita. The stronger the avidya, the more blind the asmita. So that's why we need to cultivate vidya to have a full control over asmita. The blinder the asmita, the more insecure it is. Urmil is asking me, what is perceiver? Perceiver is that part in us which is trying to perceive, which is trying to see. When we try to see our eyes, perceiver becomes eyes. When we try to hear something, that becomes the perceiver. Or when we try to understand with our mind and intellect, they become perceiver. through what we are trying to perceive the objects. That's a perceiver. So Patanjali calls asmita a force field. It's a deep-rooted affliction. The fundamental source of misery also. And this field is made up of two distinct forces that are very well blended. That's why it's very hard to distinguish them from each other. What are these forces? Purusha, that means the seer. And the second one is Prakriti. The object of perception. And Buddhi is the instrument of perception. So these are the two. And the interplay of these two, Purusha and Prakriti, gives the definition to an individual soul enveloped in ignorance. In other words, it's avidya that gives definition to our being. Purush is formless, nameless, all-pervading, eternal, omniscient. We even call it consciousness. But because of avidya, we begin to feel that we are defined by our form, our name. And we feel limited to a particular space. And we also feel mortal. Even though we are immortal, eternal, but because of avidya, we feel otherwise. So it's almost like the omniscience has shrunk to a belief that the acquisition of material objects alone are real. Nothing exists beyond this visible and tangible reality because of avidya. That's why we identify ourselves with our image. An image also not the way we look or the way our body is. We give the power to others to define us. So in the other's eyes, what our image is, that's what we think we are. We have given the power to others. The body, mind, values, beliefs, anything to everything that defines our existence. We think that's what we are. Not only that, we labor to defend our name, our fame, our prestige. We go at a greater length to defend it. Even the idea that this image might be damaged is frightening to us. And according to these rishis, that is all avidya, ignorance. To ensure that this precious self-image is well protected, we begin to build increasingly higher walls around us. We keep our private life, private world, inside these walls. And nothing and no one is allowed to enter. not even God. And locked inside these walls, we seek freedom. That's how we get cut off from both the guiding force of Purush and the nourishing force of Prakriti. But still, we are looking for lasting happiness. And in pursuit of happiness, we build more walls inside these walls. These walls could be made up of success and failure, gain and loss, honor and insult, in endless number of walls. So this is a pretty complex anatomy of asmita, you can call it. Or you can call it a very perplexing network that has been draining the vitality of our soul. Not just in this lifetime, from untold ages. Yet the soul has a great will, never ceases its pursuit of happiness, because that's the nature of the soul, looking for happiness. And in this pursuit, most of us fail to pay attention to the transformation of asmita. Looking for this happiness, we descend into the deeper waters of affliction. We want happiness, but we are looking at it wrong place. Happiness, which is our eternal nature. Happiness, which we are. But we start looking for happiness from this transitory world. And that's where Rishi Patanjali is taking us next in verse number 7. He says, Sukh Anushayi Raga. Sukh. Sukh means pleasure. Anushayi, that which resides in, or that which follows. Or Anushayi also means like a pool, a reservoir. Raga. Raga is attachment, clinging, craving. These are all the translations of this small word raga. So attachment springs from the reservoir of pleasure. Sukha Anushayi Raga. And opposite of that, Dukha Anushayi Dvesha. So Dukh is the pain, grief, sorrow, and Dvesh is aversion, dislike. So aversion springs from the reservoir of sorrow. So we saw that asmita is the essence of I amness, very ground of our existence right now. Asmita clings to the notion of whatever we come to identify as our core being. And complex network of confusion. In the scriptures, a confused person plagued with distorted self-understanding is said to be like a blind man. There is a beautiful story in the scriptures about the blind man who is led to an elephant. And he happened to explore the animal's tail. And he is thrilled. And he insists on the basis of his direct experience. Because he perceived the elephant only with the hand. Touched that. And he said, elephant is like a rope. Because that's all he saw, all he touched. Another blind man who encounters an elephant discovers its leg. So to him, an elephant is like a big pillar. A third blind person happens to touch the ear, and he's certain that elephant is like a big fan. And yet another person touches the animal's side and proclaims that this creature is like a high, thick wall. And all of them are adamant about their positions. And they are convinced of the validity of their experience. And none is willing to consider any other possibility. This is the power of a self-understanding that lacks a vision of truth. Rishi Patanjali calls this asmita. So asmita is not to be confused with mere ego. Asmita is the essence of I amness, the very ground of our existence. So, in other words, it refers to our limited, distorted, and incomplete sense of being. Just like these blind men, they cling to their notion of elephant. Asmita clings to the notion of whatever we come to identify as our core being. In fact, that becomes a very precious wealth for us. And this clinging is attachment, rag. See how they are connected? Vidya with asmita and asmita with rag. If I identify with my name and the form, and somebody says, oh, how beautiful, that's a rag. Attachment. Want to hear it again and again. So pleasure comes from holding on to asmita. There is a sense of accomplishment in seeing this notion expand and be recognized by others. That's why we want others to see us. We want them to clap for us. We want them to brag our name and our accomplishments. And even the slightest indication that someone or something is damaging this notion is frightening. We suffer from anticipating the loss of that which is so dear to us. And the desire to stop the possibility of this loss is natural. And the failure to stop it results in anger. The anger-driven thought construct is what? Vritti, which we learned in the first chapter. That's why yoga is what? Yoga Shit Vritti Nirodha. So this thought construct vritti is called dvesh, aversion. So in other words, this is what I am, is asmita. This is what I want to be, is attachment. This is what I don't want to be, is aversion or dvesh. The fear that our asmita might be altered or destroyed is an affliction, kalesh. The fear that I may lose my precious asmita is an affliction. And the fear that someone may take it away from me is an affliction. Excuse me. Let me repeat it again. The fear that I may lose my precious asmita, I amness, is an affliction, Kalesh. And the fear that someone may take it away from me, like my position, I identify myself as this and this and this, that might be taken away, is an affliction, Kalesh. So, in an attempt to escape from this affliction, we normally resort to yet another affliction where we experience a false sense of freedom from all other afflictions. And which one is that? Abhinivesh, the fifth one. Swar swahi vidushaha api tatha rud abhiniveshaha. Because we identify ourselves with this body, we don't want this to be taken away. We love our dear and near ones, our positions, or whatever we have earned and hoarded. We don't want to let it go. And abhinivesh is that, the fear of losing all. Swar swahi. Swa means one's own. Ras means essence. Vahi means the one who carries. So swar swahi means that which carries its own essence. Over here it means which carries its own subtle memories. Swar swahi. Vidushaha, a learned person, a wise person. Api means even. Tatha means in that manner. Rude, that which is riding, residing. And abhinivesha. Abhi means from every direction. That means surrounding. Ni means completely. Vesh means piercing or penetrating. Or abhinivesh means which has penetrated every living being from all around in every respect. So that's why abhinivesh has come to mean death. And the fear of death, because both death and the fear of death has penetrated every nook and cranny of our embodied consciousness. So this sutra, Swarswahi Vidosh Apihi Tatha Rud Abhiniveshaha, the translation of this is fear of death carries its own essence and predominates even the wise. We know that ours is a death-averse culture. We don't even want to talk about it. For most of us, death is an enemy. It conquers life, plunders away everything life has gathered. To a yogi, however, death is a fact. It comes with birth, accompanies us while we are alive, and harvests life without fail, just as a farmer harvests his crops. Yogis call it abhinivesh, that which has penetrated the very core of our being. There's no one in the world who's not afraid of death. Death is the culmination of all pains. The knowledge of the pain pertaining to death is self-evident, because even a tiny insect emerging from an egg or a pupa struggles to protect its life. No creature needs to be taught about clinging to life and escaping death. This innate tendency to cling to life pervades every living creature. Now the question is, why death is so painful? It is painful because believe that at the time of death, everything will be left behind. The body we cherish so deeply will be gone. At death, we will lose our loved ones, as well as our money, power, prestige, honor, and dignity. Whatever we have worked so hard in this lifetime will be taken away. And the idea of losing all that, which gives us identity, is terrifying. This fear is the root cause of pain and is virtually incurable. That is why Patanjali calls fear of death an affliction. And the goal of yoga is to attain freedom from the seemingly incurable affliction of the fear of death. Not the death, but the fear of death. It's just like a toddlers, they hide by closing their eyes, but this does not prevent them from being seen. The same way, dismissing thoughts of death or not talking about it or occupying ourselves with the charms and distractions of the world does not free us from the fear of death. We all know that death annihilates our body. Death separates us from our loved ones. But death does not kill our soul. If we remember that, we won't be afraid. The real us cannot be killed. It cannot be burnt, it cannot be wetted, it cannot be dried. It's eternal. Death doesn't even destroy our mind. It does not separate us from our likes and dislikes. Death does not nullify our habits, because they are all in our subtle body. Subtle body does not die when the grosser body dies. So then why are we afraid of dying? As students, we should examine the grounds for our fear of death. Why are you so frightened? This pervasive fear has its roots in our lack of understanding. We have not understood deep enough that there is something more precious than our bodies, more precious than our loved ones, more precious than the worldly possessions. Freedom of the soul is infinitely more valuable than the short-lived comforts of the flesh. Worldly possessions come and go. What do not pass away so easily are our habits, including the habit of being fearful. We have strengthened this habit from countless lives. These are negative habits we need to break. A person living with fear dies again and again while still alive. And Rishi Patanjali says that is an affliction. And the practice which he is telling us in this chapter, the Sadhana Pad, is to weaken these afflictions. He talked about the Kriya Yoga, Tap Swadhyay Ishwar Pranidhan. But now he's telling us in the next couple of verses that the dhyan, the meditation, can weaken these afflictions. Verse number 10, he says, Te pratipasva heya sukshma. Te means they. They means these fivefold afflictions. Pratipasva heya. Pratipasva means with potential to be born or the ability to manifest or oriented towards birth. Pratipasva. Heya means to be avoided, destroyed, or to make something inert. So pratipasva here means that which has lost its ability to manifest, or the potency has been destroyed. Suksham means subtle. So they are subtle and to be destroyed before they manifest vividly. So these five afflictions need to be removed. Something which is smaller, it's easier to get rid of. See, just like a little spark of fire, if you extinguish it right away, it will go away. But if we let it burn, become ablaze, we know how damaging that fire can be. The same thing with these afflictions. So he says, when they are subtle, destroy them. And how to do it? He says, Dhyan haya tad vrityaha. Dhyan is the meditation. Haya means to be destroyed by. Tad means that. Vritya means modifications, manifestations. So the evolutes of the afflictions are to be destroyed by meditation. So beautifully he explained what these afflictions are, how damaging they are. Now very clearly he is telling us how to have a full control over them. And we learned that avidya is the first and the foremost affliction. All other afflictions, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh, are an extension of avidya or ignorance. Ignorance is like a crab grass. If you have ever seen crab grass, it spreads through a network of branches. It's like a new system of roots. They evolve from each nodule. By the time the blades of crab grass are visible, the root system is extensive and it has taken a firm grip on the soil. So ignorance has these nodules. They are very subtle, hard to detect. Their effects become visible only when they send out shoots. But at this point, the nodules have already buried their roots deep in the mud of our mind. By the time the afflictions manifest in the form of desire, anger, greed, etc., their root systems are so firmly established that it's difficult to uproot them. A vigilant sadhak tries to destroy these nodules of ignorance while they are gathering their momentum to form roots. Aspirant understands that mind is like a field. There are all kinds of seeds in my mind. When and how it happened, where the seeds came from, is outside of our awareness. That's why it's called avidya, beginningless. But the good news is that it can come to an end. Reaching deep into the soil of the mind, discovering the seeds of avidya, roasting these seeds with the fire of knowledge can make these seeds inert once and for all. And this is what yoga is all about. That these seeds are to be destroyed while they are still subtle and are just about to manifest. That's what these two verses are telling us. That what to do if these fivefold afflictions have already become manifest. Meditation, dhyan. So discovering and destroying the seeds of ignorance is not an easy task. Just imagine a mustard seed hidden somewhere deep in the soil of a vast field. If somebody asks you to locate that seed, you won't be able to. But when the seed sprouts, turns into a plant, it becomes visible. But even at that time, you need a basic familiarity with the mustard plant so that you can recognize it. Because there are a lot of other plants are also growing in the field. But then you need the tools and the means to cut the plant before it matures and gives more seeds. Just like to remove that mustard plant, you need skillfulness. To remove these seeds of afflictions, the tool is meditation. This is what Rishi Patanjali is telling us. It is a subtle process. It requires vigilance, careful attention. Because we know that if the farmland has turned into a jungle with a wide range of plants, shrubs, weeds, isolating that small mustard plant requires a greater degree of skill. Rishi Patanjali is telling us The clearing process for a abhyasi is the practice of Kriya Yoga. That's why this particular chapter was started with that. Tap Swadhyaya Ishwar Pranidhan. The most subtle seed of avidya can be discovered and destroyed by the purest form of knowledge that dawns in the deepest state of meditation. A vidya that is slightly less subtle, relatively more manifest, or if it's vividly manifest, with the multiple stems and leaves fully blended, we can destroy it with the step-by-step practice that begins with the tap, swadhyaya, ishwar pranidhan. So practice of meditation can finally mature into samadhi. But it takes time. It definitely takes practice, faith also, for the meditation to reach to that samadhi. But in order to do even meditation regularly, we got to have a firm faith in the tap, swadhyaya, and ishwar pranidhan. So it starts with the tap, swadhyaya, ishwar pranidhan, then dhyan, then comes the samadhi. Okay, you can see that how systematically he is really taking us towards that our highest goal. Next week, we will start with verse number 12, where he's telling us that our karmic phenomena is rooted in afflictions. And this phenomena is what we experience in our current life and in our future lives. So that means if we want our future lives to be better, then we got to start working on these afflictions and our mind field in the current life. Because at the time of the death, body is left behind, but mind is not by most of us. Unless we are liberated, then sure we have left the mind and everything else too. But if we are still on this journey, the mind goes with us. So with all these practices, we are working on our mind. So let's stop it here. We'll start with verse number 12 next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnase Purnamadaye Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Om.